I want to talk about what I think is the biggest story of the day in the world of sports, and that is the college football playoff potentially expanding to 12 teams. We've talked about college football expanding. You guys know that I am a diehard college football fan. But the idea of college football expanding to 12 teams is intriguing in many ways to me, and let me explain why that is. Okay, I'm in favor of college football expanding. I like this idea the more I think about it of a 12-team expansion because you go ahead and cut out the middle ground, right? And in particular, if you go to 12 teams, here is what it would look like. You would have all 5 conference champions included in the playoff. You would have the highest ranked non-Power 5 team. So you would open up to all of the non-Power 5 conferences outside of the Big 10, the SEC, the Big 12, the ACC, and the Pac-12. And probably Notre Dame as well. Whatever the highest team was remaining from those other group of 5 non-power conferences, they would get in. That's 6 teams. And then you would have 6 at-large teams. So for the concern, and there had been some concern out there about if you went to 8 and you took the 5 conference champions, then you might well end up with a team that didn't deserve to go, taking away one of the spots. So I like this idea. The top 4 teams would get byes. The 8 teams that played in the first round would play on campus. You would then advance to an 8-team playoff. Then you would go to 4, then you would go to 2. So if you are one of the 4 highest seeded teams, then your overall road would only include 1 more victory. If you are not one of the 4 highest seeded teams, then you would need to obviously have 2 additional wins, but you would also be in the playoff. I like this idea. The more I look at it, the more I study it. I like the idea of a 12-team college football playoff. I like all 5 conferences being included. I think college football, while an intensely parochial and regional sport, is better if every conference feels like they have a chance to win. If you are, like me, a Southeastern Conference football fan, I would say the odds are pretty good that there would be about 4 SEC teams in the playoff in any given year. 3 or 4 based on the way that things would shake out. Big Ten would have a good chance to get multiple teams. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it's the right call. And the more I think about it, I can get convinced that 12 is the right number. I enjoy the top 4 seeds having an advantage and getting a bye. I also enjoy getting all the conference champs in, but not having to be held hostage if somebody wins a conference championship and they go 9-4 or 8-5 and they sneak in kind of, and otherwise they would have had no business in the college football playoff. If there's somebody else that loses, that's 12-0 and suddenly loses on a tough break in the conference title game. Now what this would do, I think, is it would preserve some value of the conference title game, but it would also make it as much about seeding very often as it would anything else. For instance, in the SEC championship game and probably the Big Ten championship as well, there's a very strong chance that both teams would be in the playoff. And so you would be talking about whether or not the team is going to get a bye or not, maybe more so. I think it devalues a little bit conference championships because in a 12-team playoff, not to say they don't matter, but just it doesn't matter as much because your goal is not to win a conference championship. It's to go win the national championship. And certainly that's what happens in college basketball. The difference is college football is so wildly popular. I think expanding the playoff would just make college football more popular. I like the idea of going to 12. I think it has a lot of sense behind it. And I would be very excited if we ended up in that situation. By the way, I also think years ahead, it's going to be wild for those of you like me who have kids to explain to them the BCS. And even before the BCS started in 1998, the idea that you used to have multiple champions will seem absolutely insane. It already does to my 10-year-old. I've tried to explain it to him, and he's like, wait a minute. You just had 2 teams playing in a bowl game, and they didn't even play against each other? And then people tried to vote on who was the best team based on judging them? Yes. My good friend Neville used to describe the way college football picked the champion as like a cake baking contest. And I do think there is some truth probably to that as well.